S-Corp versus Sole Proprietor. That's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to get started right now. Hi, my name is Taylor Darcy with Darcy Law. I work with startups, entrepreneurs, and small businesses to help them with their legal needs. So, there's actually quite a few reasons why I wanted to post this video because it seems like it would be, well, some of the things are kind of duh. But the truth is, there's a lot to do with these two things. An S corporation, as I've discussed in some of my other videos, is a formal business entity that has an S corporation or small business tax corporation entity applied by the IRS, which allows for what's called pass-through taxation. Pass-through taxation is a fancy word for you're not double taxed as you are in a standard corporation. Now, a sole proprietor is someone that starts a business in their own name, John Smith Plumbing, and does business, accepts profits and losses, and it's just them. It's a very simple thing. There's nothing crazy about it. It's not complicated. It's very easy. However, the big problem with the sole proprietorship is that there is no liability shield. What does that mean? If you're just joining us, a liability shield is something that prevents getting at assets, personal assets. So, in other words, if you have a house or if you have other assets, larger assets, 401k, stocks, that type of thing, if you are sued, in the unfortunate event that you are sued, as a sole proprietor, every asset you own is on the hook, right? You could lose everything because of a lawsuit. Your home, so on and so forth. There are exceptions, and we won't get into those because those are, for all intents and purposes, that just muddies the water. But so as a sole proprietor, everything you own is on the line, right? You can have insurance that covers you in some instances, general liability insurance, E&O insurance, so on and so forth. The big problem with those are that insurance companies, one, don't like paying claims, and two, they can deny you altogether, right? Or it could exceed your policy limits. What if someone slips and falls on your property, or you damage a priceless urn? I don't know. That's just, you're a plumber and something breaks and it costs $1.5 million to fix it, and now all of a sudden your insurance only covers $1 million, and now you're on the hook for the other 500,000, right? That can happen. I mean, I'm not saying it's likely, but it's possible, right? Bad things happen. Most lawsuits don't go for that amount, but it is possible. And so having liability insurance or some type of insurance to cover you is great. I would never say not to have that. But as I've talked about in other videos, having layers of protection, right? Contractual layers, insurance, as well as a business entity are things that will help you to be successful, right? Because these are things that you can't plan for. And you can't go back in time and start a business entity and hope that it works for you for the future. It's just not how it works. Or hope that it works for those things that happened in the past. So you need to start an entity today in order to be protected tomorrow. That there's no getting around that. There's nothing you can do to fix that from happening. So if something bad happens, then today, before you create that entity, now all of a sudden you're on the hook for whatever you have to do to fix that, right? And so that's a sole proprietor. An S corp is, as I've talked about in other videos, but just for refreshing sake, is a formal business entity. You file with the Secretary of State, the Articles of Incorporation. You go through the bylaws, shareholder agreement, all of those things. And then you file with the IRS. I believe it's Form 2253, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on that. I'd have to double check. But if you go to the IRS website and say S-Corp designation, it's right there. Not hard to find. So if you file that with the Secretary of State, or with the IRS, I should say, then that allows you to do the S-Corp tax designation. Now, you get the benefit of the pass-through taxation. So you no double tax. You're not being taxed on the earnings, the shares, of the company as well as the revenue of the company. Okay, that's what you're avoiding. And you make yourself basically an employee of the company. Now you have to pay yourself what's called a fair salary or fair wage. You can't just pay yourself nothing and then get it. The IRS does check these things, right? Because you're avoiding that double taxation. So whenever the IRS is losing money, they're going to check. That's just who they are, right? They're going to make sure that you're doing what you said you were going to do. This is true. And we're definitely not going to talk about nonprofits today, but that's very true in nonprofit world, that they are going to make sure that a nonprofit is doing what they say they're going to do, because they don't want to have, they don't want to lose out on that revenue. And so to a lesser degree, the same is true for an S-Corp. A corporation, on the other hand, they're not quite as narrowly focused. They don't look at it, they don't scrutinize it as much. So the big difference, the two main differences between an S-Corp and a sole proprietorship is, one, the S-Corp is more formal. You have to go through all of these formalities. You have to do resolutions. You have to do these things. And so that's a little bit more work. And a lot of times, unfortunately, small businesses, they don't do that work. And so that can actually hurt them. So on a con is, not only is it a lot of work, but if you don't do that, then you're exposing yourself back up to that risk. You have to keep things separate. You have to keep separate bank accounts. You have to keep separate all of these things. So it's more work. And a lot of small business owners are like, well, I don't have more than 24 hours in a day, so why should I do that stuff? And that's how they get hurt. But also, is your house worth it? Is your personal assets worth that? And so an S-Corp, you're typically limited to the liability or the assets that are invested in the S-Corp, unless they can pierce the corporate veil. Sole proprietor, all of your assets, wherever they may be, are potentially at risk. So that's a huge deal, right? So your taxes, part of it is part of it. But at the end, if you own a home, or if there's a third party that you're dealing with, as far as like if you have employees, so on and so forth, having a liability shield like an S-Corp could be, and more likely than not, is worth the extra work. Just for the sake of saving your house, right? I mean, your largest asset and your personal investments, 401k, so on and so forth. There's a lot of reason that you'd want to form a business entity. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, leave them below. I'd be more than happy to talk with you. I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. Subscribe to my channel. I'm here to help. Hope you have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.